Okay, Chumash Rashi, the Torah portion, Vayera, second portion of the book of Shmois, the book of Exodus, and we start with the Exodus. We're really getting into the Exodus. Let's get into it. We are chapter 7, verse number 8. Okay. Yomer Hashem, and Hashem said, El Moshe to Moshe, El Aaron, and to Aaron, Lamor say, Ki yadaber, when you speak aleichem, ki yadaber, sorry, not when you, that would be ki tidaber. When you speak, it says ki yadaber means when he will speak. Aleichem, pare, to you, Pharaoh, lemor say, to lochem maifis. So Pharaoh is going to speak to you, and he's going to say, give me, make for yourself a wonder. A marvel translates. Yeah, wonder, a marvel. V'amar tel Aaron, and you'll say to Aaron, Kach es matcha, take your staff, v'hashlich lifnei pare, and throw it in front of Pharaoh, v'hilasanin, and it'll become a serpent. Rashi, Mephis. So it's an interesting. So Rashi says Mephis, which usually means a wonderment, but here he says ois, a sign. What is the sign? Lahidiyah, that's to make known or to show. That the one who's sending you has the power. There's a need and there's enough power in that I'm sending you. In other words, that you should listen to me. Lisanin nochash means serpent. Okay. Verse number 10, and he came. Moshe and Aaron and Parai, V'yasu came, and they did so. Kasher Tziva, as was commanded, Hashem, as God commanded. V'yashlech Aaron's Mateu. Aaron, he threw his staff, his me, Lifnei Pharaoh, before Pharaoh. V'lifnei Avadim, and before his servants, V'hilasonin, and became a serpent. Okay? Verse number 8. V'yikra gan Paro l'chachamim. Paro too, also, he called, Vayikra means he called, the Chachamim to the wise men, the Machshafim to the magicians, V'yasu gam heim chaytum Mitzrayim, and they did also, likewise, the chaytum Mitzrayim, Nukermancers, it translates over here. 10 other, I think, term for, soothsayers and magicians. Belateyem came with their incantations likewise. Rashi belateyem, it's a new word. Belachashehoin. Unkelis translates it, meaning their incantations. And we have nothing similar to this in the Torah, a unique term. Damizloi lahad hacherev. In other words, there's nothing directly that's similar to this in Torah, this term. But you could take it apart. Lahad cherev hamishapeches. We had this in the book of Bereshit, Genesis, a revolving sword blade. The sword seemed to be revolving through an incantation. So that that's where we had something similar. Okay, verse number 12. And each of them threw down their staff, and it became a serpent. Yivla mate arin is matesa. However, Vayivla means consumed, swallowed, rather. Uh, and he swallowed the staff of Aaron, their staffs. So they all became snakes, or actually, they became snakes, now returned to a staff, and his staff swallowed their staffs. Rashi, V'yiva mate Aaron, Aaron's staff swallowed up. After it was a snake, and then it became turned back into a staff. Valis kulam swallowed all of them, right? Because it says that the staff swallowed up their staffs. It doesn't say that his staff that became a snake swallowed up the other snakes. Vayechazak leiv para, but Para's heart became strong, stubborn. Chazak means strong. In context means stubborn, right? Who did God harden his heart? No, he hardened his own heart. V'lo shama aleihem, and he didn't listen to them. Kasher diber Hashem, exactly as God said. God said he's not going to listen. Verse number 14. Hashem al Moshe, and Hashem said to Moshe, Kaved le Parai. Paro's heart is becoming kaved, heavy, obstinate, translating. Me'ein l'shalech ha'am, refusing to send out the nation. Rashi, kaved. So the word kaved over here, we had that term already, kaved peh, that Moshe spoke about his mouth, that his mouth was heavy, referring to his stutter. But here, Targumai, Onkelos translates it, yakir, to mean heavy, below yiska. Is heavy, not it has become. Below yis yakir, not that it became heavy. Mipnei shehu shem davar. Because it's an adjective, not a verb. Maybe coming from davar. Uh-huh. In other words, it is heavy, meaning his heart is heavy, not that it became heavy because of some outside influence, meaning God. Right? That's the context. Okay. Verse number 15. Leichel Parai. Okay. So God is speaking to them, right, after this incident. And now he's saying, Leichel Parai, go to Parai, Babaikar, in the morning. Vihine Yetze Hamaima. Behold, he will be going out to the water. Venitzavta likrosei. and you should stand there really closer to greet him. Al Sfasiyor, on the riverbank, referring to the Nile River. And the mata, which is the staff, that turned into a snake, take with you. In other words, Aaron's staff. Okay. Rashi. Behold, it's going. Then when he goes out to the water, then why is he going out to? Why are they meeting them there? The Narkov. He's relieving himself there. He made himself into a god. Pharaoh made himself into a god. I don't need to relieve myself. Right? I'm like a god. I don't need to relieve myself. So he would get up very early in the morning and go out to the Nile River. And there he would take care of his personal needs. In other words, in secrecy, that people wouldn't know. Okay. Verse number 16. And you shall say to him, Hashem the God of the Ivrim, of the Hebrews, Shalachani has sent me, Elecha to you, Lamor say, Shalach Isami, send out my people, the Abduni, and that they should serve me, Bamidbar, in the desert. And until now, you have not paid attention. Rashi in number 16, Adkai, until now, Adhena, right? Until now, simple meaning, Midrash, right? But the Midrashic explanation is, Ad shetishma mimeni makis bechedesh she'eftach ba b'koi amar Hashem kechatzos halayla. Aha. We'll see. So in the next verse, it uses the word koi, which is an interesting term. Now this is the way it's going to translate in the next verse. So the Midrashic is connecting the term over here, and the term is going to be used by the 10th plague of the firstborn, the plague of the firstborn. So then he's going to open up the conversation there, koi, also with the word koi, which will mean that God said, like midnight, that the plague will come of the firstborn. So the Midrash is what the Midrash is doing is connecting the terminology, that there's similar terminology, and therefore making reference to the last that when will you listen to me is after the 10th plague. Verse 17. Amar Hashem. So says. This is what says now. This is what God says. Different ways to. Besides, take that with this, you shall know. He ani Hashem, that I'm God. This you'll know that I am God. Hine anechi makim, that behold, or recognize. Oh no, Tata is recognize, yeah. You recognize I'm God. Hine, behold. I am going to strike with the staff. I should be yadi that's in my hand. Alamayim over the water, meaning the river. Actually, on the water of the river. Sorry. Benev kol adam, and it's going to turn to blood. What's this? Of course, the first plague. Right. Rashi in 17, it's going to turn into blood. Since rain does not fall in Egypt, and what would happen is that the Nile would overflow, irrigate, is ha'aretz, u'mitzrayim, and it would irrigate the land. And the Egyptians, as a result of this, right, that it was their sustenance came from the Nile River, they served it. It was an idolatry of theirs. The Vikal Hilka is Yirasam. So Rashi explains, therefore, the first thing they got smart, the first plague, is on their deity. Only afterwards does God punish them. Now, there's first their deity. See that your deity is nothing, is the first thing. Ba'adaga. And as for the fish, Asher Yaor, that are in the river, Tamus, they're going to die. Va'ash Yaor. And the Yaor, which is again the river, referring to the Nile River, is going to become putrid. Vanilla Mitzrayim, Lishtais Maim Min Yaor. And the Egyptians are going to become wary. Why? Because trying to drink water from the river. Rashi Vanilla Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim Lebake Lebakish Refuah Lemei Hayor Shiyu Ruyim Lishtais. In other words, they're going to think that, this is some kind of ecological thing. And therefore, what are they going to do? They're going to try to find some kind of cure for the water. Right? That's what Rashi's saying. They're real wary, making the effort to try to figure out what the problem is. Right. In order to, they're going to get in all the chemists and everything, check the water and, what's the grade of, and so on and so forth to figure out what kind of, either chemicals or something to put in there in order to make the water fit for drinking. Verse number 19. Hashem and Hashem said, Al Moshe to Moshe, Emor al Aaron, say to Aaron, Kach matcha, take your staff, and spread your arms, Al Mitzrayim, over the water of Egypt, Al Na'arosam, and over their rivers, Al Yorehim, and over their ponds, over the canals, rather, Yorehim's canals, V'agmehim, and their ponds, I'll call mikvah mehim, and any kind of body of water, v'yuladam, will become blood. Now, it's not just the Nile River, right? He's spreading out his arms to include all of the waterways. And there will be blood in all of Egypt, not only that, but in the vessels of wood and stone. Whoa, let's see Rashi. Lots of Rashi over here. Let's understand. Emer al Aaron. So say Tara, so the Rashi is coming to explain why is Aaron doing the plagues, right? Aaron is only really, actually, I don't know why Rashi didn't explain it in the first time when his staff turned into a serpent. It was Aaron's staff. But nothing is said over there why it's Aaron's staff and not Moshe. Aaron is really just an interpreter or, just a spokesman. He's not doing this. He's not, the messenger. So why is he using his staff? So Rashi explains, since the Nile protected Moshe when he's a little boy, when he was put into a basket, if you remember, after 3 months, therefore he did not smite it. Not for the blood or for the frogs either, because the frogs also was a plague, the second plague that was of the Nile River, since the Nile protected him. Aaron, and it was smitten through Aaron as a result. In other words, you know, he should, don't spit into the well that don't spit into the well that gives you drink. So it saved his life, denial. Very interesting. Just the Rebbe explains like it's just to teach you like denial. It did nothing, right? But yet that teaches you that denial, you have to be appreciative that it saved you, all the more so for a human being that does something for you that you should be appreciative of. Yarehem, oh, sorry, Naharesam, they're rivers. Heim Naharatam Nahar Shalanu, they're rivers that flow similar to ours. Aha. Who's ours? Meaning in France. That's where Rashi lived. Yerehem, Heim Breches Nigorim. These are man-made pools, channels, Suyas Bidei Adam, that are made by man. Bisfasa Nohar Lisodis, at the river banks to the fields, right? That in other words, it should irrigate from the banks of the Nile to the fields. The Nile would increase and would overflow into these canals and irrigate these man-made canals and irrigate the fields. The Agmehem, their ponds. This is a collection of water that's not flowing. But they're standing in one place. And it's called in Old French, iston, a pond. Okay. Next Rashi. The whole Eretz Mitzrayim and all of the land of Israel, even the bathhouses and the baths in their homes. Also, there was blood. That was the miracle. It means there was water, right? There's water in trees and in stones. In other words, that water aspect that was there also turned to blood. Wow. Hey, 20. Yatsu came Moshe, and Moshe did so. Aaron, Kasher Tziva Hashem, as Hashem had commanded, V'yardim b'bemata v'yachis hamayim, and he raised his staff, and he hit the water, struck the water. Asher b'yor, that is of the Nile River, Lady Paro, in front of in the eyes of Paro, meaning in front of him, and before his servants, Yafku, call Hamayim Asher b'yor, Ledam, and all of the water turned into blood. The dog Asher b'yor, and the fish that was in the river, Mesa, it dried up. Iva shayor b'li achlu mitzrayim lishtes mayim min hayor, and it became putrid. So much so that the Egyptians were not able to drink the water from the Nile River. There's blood everywhere in all of Egypt. 22. The Asu came Khartoum Mitzrayim, and the Khartoum Mitzrayim, these magicians or soothsayers of Egypt, they likewise did so, the Lateim, with their incantations. And he hardened his own heart, Pharaoh. He didn't listen to them because Hashem, as Hashem spoke. Rashi, with their incantations, refers to the spells that they uttered quietly, secretly. And our sages say, Belatehem Maise Shading. So Belatehem refers to the acts of demons. Humasik Shofim, the acts of sorcery. Oops. Yeah. Continuing in Rashi, Parai, and the heart of Parai was strengthened, was stubborn. Loimer al yidei machshefes atamisim came. That in others, why did he become? Because he saw that his own sorcerers, they were able to do some kind of similar trick, if you will. So he thought, okay, it's just magic. And that's what you're doing. Tev and Atem machnisim la'afram. What are you doing? You're bringing straw to Afram, Ir Shekule Tevin, a city that's full of straw. Right? It's a metaphor he's using. You're bringing magic to Egypt? We're full of magic over here. What do you think you're trying to pull the wool over our eyes? Man, we got the magic here. And Para turned the Yava and he walked away from them and he went to his house. Slave, and he didn't pay attention. His heart did not turn to pay attention. The Gam is also to this. Gam is also also to this, meaning, so what do you mean all to this? Meaning, because first there was the serpent, right? And remember that the Aaron's staff swallowed up all of their staffs. So, like, he did one over them, right? But he didn't pay attention to it, right? To this wonderment. And not to the Nile turning into blood. Sorry, there we are. Okay, 24. Vayechperu kol mitzrayim sevivos veyor maim lishtais. So one of the Yechperu, they dug all of the Egyptians around the river for water to drink. Because they're not able to drink from the river. And 7 full days passed. After Hashem had smitten the river, Rashi Bimale. And it was filled. Minayin Shivas Yamim. 7 days were complete. And a full 7 days. That the river did not revert back to its former state. The plague, and each plague was this way. It took a month. Took a month. I'm sorry. It would last for a quarter of a month, which means 1 week. The gimel chol yom al yom master behen. And but yet the 3/4 of the rest of the month, because each plague was a full month, right? The three was about the warning that was being given to the Egyptians, that which was forthcoming. Okay, verse 26. Yom Hashem al Moshe, and Hashem said to Moshe, and to Parai, Amar to Elav, Kayom Hashem Shalach Yisami Abduni. Hashem said to Moshe, go to Pharaoh, V'amar to Elav, and say to him, Kayom Hashem, so says God, Shalach Yisami, send, let my people go, Abduni, so that they may serve me. Okay. I would love to continue. However, I have to go. Sorry. Tanya will be around 10 o'clock.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Right.
Thank you, Rabbi.
God bless you all. We'll see you soon.
Yes.